What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Shot of Sports podcast. Grab a drink, a snack. This is your weekly dose of sports where we'll break down and do a deep dive on the world of sports. Whether you're a casual fan or a diehard, we're here to bring you the latest, the best analysis, and the hottest takes. I'm your host, Jalen Nicholson Bourne. Please like, share, subscribe. Hit the tap the notification bell for us so you can be notified whenever we drop, so you won't miss one. Today we got on the show. We'll have our first guest on the show today. Leaf Tooling, one of my co-workers, co-host on the Locked On Network for NBA Big Board. He fills in sometimes for our boss, David Locke, for Locked On Jazz, and I believe he does some work for ESPN 700. So he'll be on in a second, and it's pretty cool to get some live, actual reaction from like a diehard Jazz fan from at the debacle we seen last night. So today we got on the show Nazir Spencer and Chris. Nazir Spencer and Chris Pittner. How was y'all weekend?
It was good, man. It was very interesting yesterday seeing that lottery though. I was a little shocked, I didn't know. We'll get into it, but that was interesting. And then we got some Giannis news, which I have my opinions on, but
absolutely insane.
Otherwise some good hockey going on. That was awesome.
Well, how about the Toronto Cowboys?
hey, it's 2-2. Relax, it's 2-2. Hey, I want Florida to win, but I'm not gonna count them out yet.
This is the type of thing that they do, though. They find a way to.
They will find a way to lose.
They find a way to lose. They were up 2-0. You couldn't take one in Florida.
A good 2-0 too. Embarrassed them.
There's a reason why I didn't pick them to go all the way to the Stanley Cup final this year.
It's fair enough, man. Hey,
absolutely insane.
I got Florida still, but I wouldn't count out the Maples, bro.
Yeah, I mean it's we're gonna get into this in a second, but the Giannis trade is insane. Like,
not worried. We got our opinions.
I have some thoughts on what I think a return package should be and what team it should be from, but yeah, we'll get into that in a bit.
All right, so with that, we'll jump into our first topic. Our guest will be on probably in the middle of our first topic. So last night was the NBA draft lottery, and it was an absolute stunner and a gut punch for some. The Dallas Mavericks win the lottery as they capture the flag at the number one spot, anticipated draftee Cooper Flag out of Duke, as the 76ers as the Spurs and the 76ers finish out the top three in that order. It comes at a cost, though, of a gut punch for the three worst teams in the league. The Hornets, the Jazz, the Wizards, in that order, round out 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
Just what was the initial reaction?
Well, for me, I thought it was rigged because Mavericks first and then the Spurs second. We got a generational talent on the Spurs, and we just got 2 back-to-back Rookie of the Years, and they get the second overall pick. Okay. And then the Mavericks won just 1.8% chance of getting it over all the other teams. Like, that was the lowest chance, and they get it. Okay. 76ers. I can see that. I understand that, top three. The third pick, whatever. Maybe not over the Hornets or anything like that, but the Sixers were pretty bad, dude. I don't know. I saw them live like 3 times, and they're really bad. So I wasn't too surprised on that one. It's just the first 2 picks was just like, dude, come on. Like, are we hiding it anymore? Like, that's ridiculous. 1.8%, the Mavericks getting that, and then you got 2 back-to-back Rookie of the Years, and the Spurs just get it and either get Ace Bailey or be able to trade that pick and pick up a Giannis or something. Who knows? So,
my first thought was I immediately thought back when I saw that the Mavs got 1. I went back and thought about the Luka trade and how fishy the circumstances were around that, and how that essentially came out of the blue. No other team really even got a shot to trade for him. And I hate to go all tinfoil hat conspiracy here, but my question is whether Adam Silver almost forced the Luka trade through and went, hey, if you do this for us, we'll give you this guy. Because then Luka's able to go to a big market for the next, I don't know, 10 to 15 years, however long he keeps playing. And then the Mavericks get a generational talent, which replaces the generational talent that they had before.
Well, now we have our guest, so we're going to be able to get his reaction right away, too, as well. Welcome, Leaf. How you doing?
Doing well, but wish my Utah Jazz got a better selection there, because that couldn't have gone worse for all the teams that actually were bad. So as I heard at the tail end there, the Mavs, made the worst trade in history and got rewarded for it.
Yeah, so what was your? I heard that somebody, I think Jamil, or Will said you was on a plane. Were you on a plane when you was watching it?
I was boarding. I was
Okay.
at an airport, and then as the whole plane ride, I was just stewing over it. I'm still not happy about it, but I think I'm more mad that the Mavericks got 1 than I am that my beloved Jazz fell to 5.
Yeah, so go ahead and introduce yourself to the pod. This was one of my coworkers who works for the Utah Jazz, and he does NBA Big Board, I believe, with the Locked On Podcast Network, and he you did some work with ESPN 700.
Yeah, I did Jazz stats and I guess hockey last year, but Jazz stats for the last 4 years. Fill in on a Locked On a Jazz, like Jalen said, on NBA Big Board. I do draft evaluations, and so the draft's a big part of the year for me, and was very, very optimistic, hopeful. A lot of people had this kind of misery insurance around Utah, saying, "Oh, if we're going to be 5, we're going to be 5," because it was a 48% likelihood of doing so. I really believe that the Jazz would end up with a top 2 or 3 pick. So as soon as the Wizards went 6, it meant that the Jazz had to be 5. So I was mad by the time the Wizards went 6, knowing how those computations had to turn out. But I think the worst part is that the Mavericks were in the play-in game. They had 39 wins, and they were only 7 times less likely to get the number 1 pick than the Jazz, who had 17 wins. And so I've never been a big proponent of the play-in game. I think it's a media way to get people interested in basketball. But I think it disincentivizes playing hard for 82 games, because, you play those 82 games, you're supposed to make the playoffs. Instead, you can be in the playoffs, and technically a 7th seed of the regular season could have the number 1 pick and only be 7 times less likely to get the number 1 spot than a team like the Jazz, who won 17 games. And as Jalen and I know, some of those games were brutal.
Yeah, one that comes to mind is actually the Timberwolves game at the end of the season, which was, it's the end of the season. No one's playing for real, but the Timberwolves were playing for something. And to see that the Miami Heat hit a game winner for the Jazz to get the worst record in basketball, and then for them to go out there and lose by like 20 plus. The Timberwolves ultimately could have had the number 1 pick if they didn't make the playoffs. Do you understand that? Like,
That's kind of crazy to think about.
Cooper
Man.
Flag could have went to Minnesota if they didn't win in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, man. Leaf, man. Hey, I'm Nazir Spencer. I'm a local lover of the Bucks, and we got our own problems with Giannis over here. But hey, I got a question for you, man. So the Mavericks had a 1.8% chance of getting that number 1 overall pick. If you guys had even gotten second, like, how would that have made you feel? Like, I understand going from the projected 1 to 5 is like horrible, but who would you rather have gotten? Would you rather have gotten Harper, Ace? Who would you want to get if there wasn't one?
I would have taken Harper. I think Ace Bailey's got this all-world potential in terms of he's long and he can shoot the basketball, and a lot of the NBA covets that wing who can be versatile. I mean, think of Jason Tatum, which is a whole nother topic. I mean, he tore his Achilles in all odds, but think of the versatile wings that kind of the Paul Georges of the world set up, the long wings who score the basketball. Kevin Durant, of course, being the best of that archetype. But Ace Bailey draws a lot of acclaim, but they're on the same team, and Dylan Harper was significantly more consistent and the more scouted opponent, the one who was better to you look at him and you say, okay, that's the guy on the team. And so I feel like it's a pretty simple evaluation of who was better because they were on the same basketball team. But at the same time, I would have been happy with either of them. If you put me in the top 3, I would not have complained a single word. Obviously, I wanted Cooper Flagg. I do a ton of college basketball evaluation, and Cooper Flagg to me is the best prospect since Anthony Davis. And you can make an argument that he's a better prospect than Anthony Davis because he plays a more coveted position. So there's a lot to lose there. But because a couple of years ago, Victor Wembanyama was so good, and there was not really a second option. Like Brandon Miller was very good. He was a 21-year-old rookie, and that it's night and day. Wembanyama is probably a top 10 player in the NBA through 2 years, and Brandon Miller is probably a top 80 player in the NBA. This year, I think it's closer between Flagg, and the disparity between he and Harper and Bailey. I would have been thrilled to get any of the 3. I guess one can pray that Bailey falls, but I would have gone with Harper to answer your question.
Gotcha. So
So
you
go ahead. So
so-
here's the actual, like, if anybody didn't see it, we got the actual top 14, Mavericks, Spurs, Sixers, Hornets, Jazz, Wizards, Pelicans, then it goes Nets, Raptors, Rockets, Trailblazers, Bulls, Hawks, and then Spurs again. Yes, the Spurs had 2 picks in the top 14. So that goes to show you, that goes to tell you all you need to know about this lottery. We do have some video from LeBron James who talked about the draft lottery, but it was on the Pat McAfee show though. But I think it was a few weeks ago. So here's the clip.
Listen, man, during the ball drop, during the lottery drop, Cleveland got the number 1 pick. I just don't think that was. Just,
what are you?
What a coincidence!
Don't you think?
Wemby with the Spurs.
Man,
That was a coincidence.
oh my
There
God!
goes
Let's keep LeBron home. You know what? Patrick Ewing to the Knicks. Derrick Rose to the Bulls. Right? I understand the assignment, guys. I had to make sure that, I had to do my part. I didn't want to be a fuck up. I just didn't want to be a fuck up, man. Like I said.
The odds of the top 3, the odds of that top 3 NBA draft for it being the way it is for it to be Dallas, San Antonio, and Philadelphia. It was 0.0114%. So it was less than 0.5%.
Frustrating for sure for any of those teams in that spot, because even the Pelicans dropped all the way to 7. I know, Jalen, you and I talked a lot last Friday about how Cooper Flagg could directly impact the Jazz and how he could essentially turn them around overnight. And now he's going to a team where it's going to be him and some other guys that could potentially still be all-stars. We don't really know what's going to happen with Kyrie on the Mavericks because of the injuries that he sustained. But Anthony Davis will still probably be a serviceable player next year. It just feels like, I don't know, it feels like they might be almost unvindicating tanking. And this is almost like them sending a message to teams like the Wizards, for example, where they have a really bad roster and they're like, figure it out pretty much. I don't know. It's really strange how this seems to happen year after year, where the worst team in the league never ends up with the 1 pick.
See, I always say that as well. Like, when you obviously if a team's tanking, like it's I feel like it's going to be less likely for you to get that number 1 pick because I don't know. I feel like they're trying to prove a point. I've said that for years since the Zion pickup when Pelicans got it because I don't even think they were tanking that year. If I remember correctly, they were just bad. Like they just couldn't win. But it's been some conversations about taking in the front office of the league, and they want to try to put a stop to it, I guess. But it seems like at least, and that's kind of the results we got of yesterday, unfortunately. But the Wizards and Pistons have got the worst of it, I'm pretty sure. But now the Jazz are at that tail end of it, which kind of sucks to watch.
Yeah, really quickly, my name's Chris, by the way. I'm also a huge Wisconsin sports fan. It's good to meet you. I heard that one of the people that could be potentially mocked to the Jazz is Con Knipple, who's a local kid for us. I got to watch him growing up because my brother and him were in the same grade, so I got to see him play in youth ball a couple of times. What would your thoughts be about the Jazz potentially drafting him?
I'd be a little frustrated if that were the pick, not because I don't think Con is a good player. My philosophy about drafting is you want to draft someone who has the potential to transcend and be the franchise talent. I think Con slots in as a role player. And so I would be frustrated to draft a role player at 5. I mean, the reason that you tank is you need cracks at the bat. You just need at bats to get a good pick. So you look at the Pistons the last 2 years, they were the worst team in the NBA the last 2 years. And both of those years, they ended up with a 5th pick, just like the Jazz did. So that's 3 straight years. But the Pistons a couple of years prior were the 3rd worst team and got the number 1 pick with Cade Cunningham. So if you give yourselves the opportunity, then eventually you're going to find them. You look at the Timberwolves, who might, like Jalen said, could have been in the lottery, but also now are 1 game away from the Western Conference Finals. They got the guy, and that's Anthony Edwards. They also had the chance with Towns, and they got Andrew Wiggins, so they actually were exceedingly lucky. And Wiggins, I understand, was traded to them from Cleveland, but they got exceedingly lucky with multiple top picks. So I think the cracks of the bat is important. But as back to what Con Knippel, my philosophy on him is I think he's a plug and play player, and he may have a higher floor. I believe in high ceiling, especially at the top 5 of a draft. And this year's draft has guys that make me more confident than especially last year's draft, where I felt like Stephon Castle was the only rookie I had any confidence in. He was my number 1 all along last year, and this year number 5 I think could be a guy like Trey Johnson. Or, I'm not the biggest VJ Edgecombe believer, but VJ Edgecombe, many teams have 3 on their personalized big boards. So taking Con at number 5 would be a bit of a settle, in my opinion, though he could easily be as good or better of a player initially. I think he's got a very high floor. I just don't think his ceiling's as high as some players in this draft.
When it comes down to VJ Edgecombe, he's like the outlier in this draft. Everyone says like, you go Cooper Flag, you got Ron Harper, Ace Bailey, and then it's a significant drop off to VJ Edgecombe. Well, he measured up at 6'4" barefoot.
Yeah, I don't think
the
that's
draft combine. So that actually, he might be in 6'5.5" with shoes on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, when I saw that last night, I was like, oh well, we may actually have to take a different role into thinking and evaluating VJ, because he does drive to the basket. He's not the greatest defender, but he can defend. He played for a Baylor team where Keontae George and them were. And didn't Baylor win the national championship by being able to play defense?
They did, but that was so long ago at this point. Edgecombe only played 1 year of college. There was none of those guys left.
Well, yeah, but the same philosophy still goes from the coaching staff, though. He's still, taught to play defense a little bit at least. So,
yeah, I think I don't think he's a big drop off at all. I think he's just kind of slept on because the other 4 players are significantly better, in my opinion, because they play both sides of the ball better. But like you said, drives to the basket well. He can shoot a little bit, especially his mid range, and his defense. I think his perimeter defense is okay. I don't think it's that bad. And then obviously when you watch him rebound, that's the one thing for me. If you're going to be a top 5 pick, and all the other stats matter, but for me, I don't know, rebounding and your defense really matter, because obviously everyone can play offense these days. Those little intangibles that you want in those players, and like Leaf was saying, the philosophy of getting that player, you want to be able to transcend your team. And with not being able to do those little things and put in the effort, like for example, when the Warriors drafted Brandon Podziemski, he wasn't viewed as a great defender or rebounder. Now you see him, all you see is him rebound and defend. He doesn't play too much offense unless he's got the chance to. You want to play like that.
Jalen Williams
exactly, or Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson was able to transcend his team a little bit, and when he was healthy, the Hawks were good. And he's been able to do all those great things like rebound. I know he's a forward, a power forward, and everything like that, but it's just little things that that you want to be able to get in the player in the draft, because the NBA draft is a lot harder than the NFL draft, in my opinion, because you got to really evaluate, and there's a lot less players, and a lot less opportunities for players to get their skills out in the view of scouts. So
yeah, so Ayesha Curry has said this in 2016. I've lost all respect. Sorry, this is absolutely rigged for money or ratings, and she probably said I'm not sure, which I won't be silent. Just saw it live. Sorry. So this was probably around
It
a
was after
time
Game
when,
6, I believe, of the finals that
yep,
year.
yep, had to be when the Cleveland Cavaliers came back from that 3-1 lead.
Mhm.
So I don't
I
know.
vaguely,
She wasn't she wasn't saying that the draft is rigged, but now you're starting to see that. I saw that tweet resurface a lot on X last night. Like she saw something before we all did, or Aisha Curry already called it. Well, she wasn't really talking about the draft, but you do have a point. You do have a point to say that something is rigged in the league. So it is crazy.
Leaf, what's your thoughts
wonder.
about the Leaf the league being, you know, kind of rigged, or are you not a big believer on that?
I'm not the biggest believer in conspiracy, but I will tell you the NBA has been ruined for me in the sense that ever since that series was the last time the NBA was fun to watch because you had the greatest comeback ever, 3-1 comeback. LeBron beats the team that was 73-9, and then they go get Kevin Durant. Ever since then, for context, I'm a diehard Jazz fan. I watched every game as a little kid from like age 3 till age 18. As soon as that happened, my interest started to dissipate. But then I worked for the team, and I'm very knowledgeable about the NBA. Still love my Jazz, but Kevin Durant goes to a team that went 73-9. Like that's where the NBA became crazy because you knew who's going to win every year. This year's playoffs, you don't know who's going to win, and that's pretty nice, especially now that Jason Tatum unfortunately went down. I thought the Celtics and the Thunder were on a collision course because I was not the biggest believer in the Cavaliers. But you look at the NBA, I don't think the lottery's rigged. I do think that the lottery system has been changed in a way that has
Yeah.
said, oh, disincentivize tanking. But now a team that has 39 wins and their over under before the season was 48 wins can get the number one pick. And the year before was the 10th most likely team, the Hawks, and this year the 12th most. They had to win a coin flip against the Bulls in order to be the 11th and draw this combination. And then the Spurs, of course, had great fortune. And one team going to elevate. Like every year, a team elevates. But the three worst teams in the NBA didn't end up with a top 3 pick. The 4 worst teams in the NBA didn't end up with a top 3 pick. Like you spin it the way however you want. It's exceedingly unlikely what happens. I don't really believe in the collusion, the conspiracy, but I am disgruntled because a team like the Mavericks can make the worst trade you can possibly make. Trading a guy through 6 years of his NBA career was a 5-time All NBA first team. So a top 5 player through 5 years of his 5 of the 6 years of his NBA at 25, 26 years old. And you can get then transcendent talent that is the best prospect since a guy you have on your roster, Anthony Davis, American prospect. I want to clarify because Wembanyama's better. And then the Spurs would have been the next one. So that outcome made me sick. The Jazz falling was a distinct possibility because it was 48% likelihood that they had the 5 pick. It's almost 50% that they were going to pick at 5, and I don't think that's right necessarily, but I don't think it's rigged to say, oh, the Jazz are small market, therefore they must be the 5 pick.
52.1% for them to get the top 4 pick. How does that happen?
It doesn't. That's the issue. And my last question was you know, you're talking about the trade. I was actually going to bring that up, the Luka trade, and you mentioned that, you know, the last series that was very interesting to watch was that 2016 one. Do you think that the Luka trade is going to be, you know, good for the NBA? And you know, there's trades about Giannis coming up that we're going to talk about as well. Do you think the trades like this brings back the NBA, brings back those views and the feeling that you get when you watch the NBA? You know, a change, I should say, to teams to get your viewings and your likeness back up to the standards that it was before.
I do think so. And I'm not sure it's because of the Luka trade, but I think you're on the point of something that's going to be a huge change in the NBA. And I think Giannis and your hometown Bucks are going to be at the forefront of this because the NBA has made the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, has lower money. So a team like the Celtics, and let's say Jason Tatum didn't get hurt yesterday. They had a decision to make anyway of how do you pay Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, or do you make the rest of your team so solid that you have one star and then a bunch of really good players? Because teams can't buy super teams anymore. You can't have 3 stars because the rest of your team will have no money spent on it and it'll be super inept in terms of the depth. So you're going to look at the NBA becoming more defensively built, in my opinion. I think you're going to see teams built on their strength of the roster. That when a really good player has a rookie contract, and now it's win now mode, as opposed to saying, oh, when we re-sign him, then we're going to contend. No, it's going to be win now mode. I think the Spurs need to pounce when Wembanyama's on a rookie contract, as opposed to when he's the top paid player type in the NBA. Teams are going to have to construct their team equally and not top heavy, because now it's going to cost too much to do so. And I think it makes the NBA have a lot more parity, and it will be more fun to watch. And because you don't know who's going to win, it will have more twists and turns. So maybe the Luka trade was the threading through the eye through the needle of, okay, we're going to do this a touch early, and now we're going to have a rookie in Cooper Flag, which of course they didn't know at that point, be the rookie contract and go all in with 2 stars. But I think you're going to see fewer top heavy teams, and it will be more fun to watch. And I'll be very curious to see what your Milwaukee Bucks do this offseason. Perhaps Giannis to Utah. I'm just going to put that out there.
Chris,
Was
what do you
absolutely think? So the last point I'll make about this is that I was talking to my dad about this yesterday, that I think it's funny how each group, you know how it goes from 14% to like around 12.5%, 10%, and then it goes to like 5 or 6%, and then it goes to like barely a chance, 1.8. How come it is we had a 1.8% that jumped into the top 4? We had a 5 or 6% with the Spurs jumping into it at 3 into the top 4 again. That's 2 teams. Then we had 10.5% from the 76ers to jump into the top 4. And then we had 14%. So you tell me there's 3 teams that had the highest odds to get into the top 4 and only 1 make it? And if you look at it, it goes down every single team that made the top 4. It's like a bracket.
Now the Spurs have all the ammo to get Giannis, man. That's what I was going to ask Chris next. You know, we're Bucks fans, and with
that, we could actually jump into the
I have some thoughts.
So also yesterday, Giannis made some headlines by saying he's open to a trade. Here's a report from Shams. Shams said 2-time MVP. Giannis has not made any firm decisions, but for the first time in his career, he's open-minded about whether his best fit is in Milwaukee or playing elsewhere, league sources told ESPN. So you can jump right into that.
Yeah, Chris, I want to get to your thoughts, because I have working with ESPN Milwaukee a little bit. I have a few thoughts on exactly what's going on and if he were to get traded, where he'd go, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
I think San Antonio probably has the best position to offer us both picks and win now, not win now necessarily type of players, but good players with upside. I think Giannis is a top 3 player in the league. I don't know how much longer he's going to stay in his prime. However, he's still there as of right now, and we have to assume moving forward that he will be for at least a few more years. So I think the package that I would want from the Spurs, because that would be my preferred team for where he goes, just based on what we could get back, would be the 2nd overall pick, Devin Vassell, and Stephon Castle. I think I was talking with my roommates about this last night. I think you can't get out of San Antonio without getting one of their top 3 most valuable players in either Fox, Wemby, and Castle. And I don't think Wemby's obviously not going to be available, even if we offered the house for him. De'Aaron Fox, I just don't know how he fits in with Dame still on the roster for at least another year or two, making $50 million. I think Castle is a good guard with a lot of upside. He was Rookie of the Year this year. I think he'd be a good fit. And then Devin Vassell is another solid player where I just don't know how he'd fit necessarily in with the Spurs. And I think giving him kind of the reins almost to a franchise in a way, giving him a year to see how he does as a 1st or 2nd option on Milwaukee would be good. And then obviously you can draft whoever you want with the 2nd pick after Cooper Flag.
Yeah, so when that news broke yesterday, that he was kind of, thinking about leaving, just for context, for Leaf, I work a little bit. I worked for this news station in Milwaukee, 620 WTMJ, and we partner. We're right down the hallway from ESPN Milwaukee. So I hear all the talks about what's going on with the Bucks or what's going on with the Packers or Admirals, or Brewers. And yesterday's hot topic was obviously Giannis, and my first thought was, well, the Spurs would probably be before the lottery. Obviously, the Spurs would probably be the best option because obviously we got Castle, Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, even their other guard Trey Jones that they have that they don't really use for some reason. And
I'm wrong. Isn't Trey Jones on the Bulls?
oh, did he might get traded? Yeah, right. He got traded during that trade
Deadline, yep.
And so whatever, Jeremy Sohan and Vassell and Castle, and now they have that second overall pick, and it just makes it so much easier for them to pair Giannis and Wemby, the two probably most dominant players in the league. I understand, Wemby's been playing for 2 years, but you can't deny that he would have won, Depoy this year if he stayed healthy. But that's probably the best package. The other package is probably I'm thinking they're aiming towards Texas. So Houston probably be a good one. Jalen Green isn't the best playoff performer as we've seen. He only had one good game in the last series, and so they're probably maybe looking to ship him off. And Jalen Smith or Jabari Smith, excuse me, he's not too dominant as well. So trading that for Giannis would be a good deal probably. But I personally think that this is just an agent thing going on because we've seen this before. Agents like to put a little word out there so the teams can get pressured and make some moves. Make sure that you live up to your word of being loyal to your star, franchise player. So I think that this is because I feel like if he was leaving, it would be more so, oh, he's got teams that he wants to go to. He's got, places in mind that he wants to go to. All he says is that he's open-minded about staying in Milwaukee or whatever they want to do to move him on and for the better of the team. He's open to it. It doesn't necessarily mean he has a destination on where he wants to go. But that's just my initial thought. I don't think anything of it just yet. I think that the only time to panic is when he announces those teams that he is interested in going, or his agent puts out to Shams or any other reporter where he wants to go. So that's my first opinion. But if he were to go, I think those two Texas teams are probably the best options in package wise.
What confused me the most is when he said for the first time in his career. And it's been pretty clear through the years that they've been trying to stir this up for years. So I'm not really sure how this is going to really differ from anything else. I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors so far.
Well, the difference is, we got Dame and we've been so unsuccessful with it, and he just tore his ACL, and we probably don't have a view for the future. We don't control our first round picks. We don't control any of our picks, I'm pretty sure. So they could be bad. It could be a long time before we can contend again. Obviously, with Giannis, you have a chance every time, but he can only do so much. It's 82 games and, more in the playoffs. So that's just my initial thoughts on that, though. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Leaf and Jalen. So,
yeah, you can go ahead, Leaf, with a brief thought so we can get into our next topic about the Celtics and the playoff look in. So go ahead, Leaf, for a second.
Yeah, my thinking about Giannis is the Bucks are in a difficult situation because of their lack of draft picks, and they've been in win now for so long. And while Giannis is, in my opinion, the second best player in the world, I don't think their team's constructed to, even if they were to make trades to get them to have a more talented, more well-built roster. I don't think they have a team that can contend. And so then you say, well, do you keep Giannis because he's a franchise icon? Yes, it'd be hard to part with him, but the business side would indicate it's probably smarter to try to get a return on Giannis before his talent level and production wanes. And so, yeah, you look at the Spurs and you look at the Rockets, I think are the two teams you'd look at. But the thing is, you need to find a team. If you're trading Giannis, you need to find a team who own other teams' draft picks and have young talent, because if you're trading them Giannis, they're trying to win. Therefore, their picks don't mean as much as they do right now because they had the number 2 pick. Yes, you could get the number 2 pick. I'd be pretty stunned if they gave you Castle and the number 2 pick, in fact, because both of those picks should be all-star level guards. I think the Spurs hold the chips now that they have a 2 pick as well as Castle. I think you could have gotten Castle and Vassell, but not Castle and Harper or Castle and Bailey, whatever you guys pleased to do at number 2 should that trade happen. I think the Rockets are another team that would be interesting. However, they don't have picks, and it's important to emphasize that the Bucks would be in a rebuild and therefore would need picks, but they don't own their own picks. So I do think it's a bit of a difficult situation for the Bucks. I think they made win now moves, which is the right thing. Unfortunately, Dame got hurt. Giannis couldn't do it all himself, despite being fantastic. Like, Giannis is unbelievable, but the NBA right now is supporting strength in numbers. Like, the team that is the most well-built, most well-constructed, top to bottom, are the teams that can win it, and the Bucks are not. They had very good player in Giannis. They had an aging, very good player in Dame. They made a win-now move that didn't work out, and you can applaud that, but it does set teams back, and that's happened many times. So I'll be curious to see what happens in that regard.
And you brought up the picks a lot, and I think there's rumors about the Nets having so many great picks and being able to trade those picks, but at the same time, I think Giannis wants to go somewhere where he wants to win. And there's been talks about the Thunder. They have some great picks as well, but I don't think they want to break up that trio and Williams, Shea, and Chet Holmgren. So obviously one of those guys would have to be on the table in a trade like that, along with picks. And I just don't see that happening in any capacity. So it's just something to look out for. I think those two Texas teams are the top guys for sure, but you can't rule out the guys, the teams with the great picks that we probably want in the future. So
yeah, I actually think it's funny that since the Spurs have the number 2 pick, they can add another superstar and go to the finals next season, while the Bucks, who were literally in the playoffs this season, can get the number 2 pick. So that's absolutely insane. So basically, the number 2 pick is going to a playoff team. Yeah, we love the lottery. So I'm going to jump into our next topic, which is the Celtics losing Tatum in a playoff look-in. Jason Tatum was having a game of his life just to go down with a non-contact injury, which absolutely looks like a torn Achilles last night. But over the weekend, we saw the Pacers go up 3-1 on the number 1 seeded Cavs by absolutely blowing them out of the water. The Cavs were down 41 at the half, 80-39, as they fell officially 129-109. And the Thunder tie up the series with the Nuggets at 2-2 apiece, while the Wolves go up 3-1 on the Warriors, with Steph missing yet again. So I do have a video clip. If people didn't see Tatum getting injured, here is that clip.
Back in, lost the ball. Anunoby all by himself throws it down. And Tatum is hurt. Tatum is down. He wants a timeout. Tatum in so much pain. And the Celtics call timeout, grabbing that right ankle.
So before we have Leaf leave, I did want to get your thoughts on the Celtics and the Pacers. So go ahead and what did you think? What do you think about the Pacers being a 3-1 on the best team in the East?
I did feel like the Cavaliers were a little bit fraudulent, as I alluded to earlier. I felt like a team that's constructed with 2 diminutive guards. I know very personally that the Jazz had Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, both as all-stars, with a similar setup with an all-world defender behind them. They have 2 very good defenders in Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, but neither of them spaced the floor effectively for a playoff series. And then, they solidified and got a better team once they got DeAndre Hunter. But that's a team that has to come together, and they have those glaring flaws that I've seen time and time again by watching my Jazz play with a diminutive backcourt. So I had my concerns. I did think they were going to win the series, but I listened to Bill Simmons, who is a basketball, like him or hate him, the guy loves basketball. He lives and breathes it, and he watches more regular season hoops than anyone. And he pointed out that the Pacers have the bodies to throw at the Cavs, and so they won't be overwhelmed. And I thought about it, and I thought, this is going to be a 6 or 7 game series. I'd probably lean to the home team. Once they won game 1, I thought, okay, for sure the Cavs win game 2. And a championship level team does win game 2. They are winning. They are closing without some of their stars, and I understand that, and that does matter. But a championship level team wins that game. They lost it, and then they lose by 40 in game 4. So I've been a little lower on the Cavaliers all season. I did think they'd win this series, but I thought the Celtics would beat them. I fully understand the Celtics are not in a great position themselves, but I thought that their ceiling was an Eastern Conference Finals berth, and I wouldn't be super surprised based on their build if they were going to lose in the second round. As for the Celtics, I think they're still probably the best team in basketball to me. They've just played terribly in fourth quarters, and now the real question with the Celtics is, they were going to have to make a money decision on Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, or both? Do you go with both, and who else do you lose because they had a kind of dynasty brewing, but their supermax is kicked in, and now instead of having a chance to have the signature game of Jason Tatum's career and potentially win that game, which they've led by 14 or more in the second half of every game this series, like that's crazy to be down 3-1 with that, but they've had that happen, and now they've lost their transcendent talent, a top 5 player in the NBA. Though I don't really like Jason Tatum, and he's way more hated than he probably should be, that's happened. And now he's probably out for 18 months, because 18 meaningful months. He's going to miss the rest of the season. He's going to miss next year. And then they got to reload for the next season and make significant franchise decisions. So the Celtics had a nightmarish night last night.
I'm a big, I actually am it's kind of crazy to think about that I'm a Bucks fan who actually likes Jason Tatum. And it sucked to watch that last night because I've rooted for him since he came out of Duke and everything like that. So he was just, he's that good of a player to me, but I don't know exactly what the Celtics were doing this series. I understand, injuries were lingering with Holiday and Porzingis having this crazy illness going on. I'm not sure exactly what that's all about, but it really affected his game. But with the Knicks, I thought the Knicks were fraudulent after the first series because Cat wasn't playing up to standards. Mikal Bridges wasn't playing up to standards until this series where he's played absolutely amazing. Jalen Brunson I wasn't worried about, but to see them up 3-1 and New York being on the cusp of a conference finals is shocking to me because I did not think they would be able to pull that off, especially after the trade they made. I thought Cat was a liability defensively, giving up the highest field goal percentage in the paint this year, which is just mind blowing in my opinion. And it's very shocking to see, and it really sucks to see Tatum go down because I was excited to see him do good after he got kind of blackballed at the Olympics. But it kind of shows to go why he got benched in my opinion. They weren't able to close out like you guys were saying. Fourth quarter matters. They weren't able to close out as a championship team. Like they should be. And, it kind of happens with the Cavs as well. And they weren't winning games. So the Pacers were able to do that. They got bodies, Aaron Nesmith, Aaron Nimhart, all those little role players that they have. They're able to do that. They're able to do all these great things. And now we're seeing what we've been talking about, the defensive, kind of surgence of the NBA coming back. Obviously the Pacers are more offensive than anything, but those teams that are deeper now and can have those stable players, we're seeing the results of that. So it sucks to see Tatum go down. Yeah. It's kind of nice to feel something new. Knicks Pacers looking like conference finals, and as much as I hate the Pacers, they're pretty good. So it is what it is now.
So with that, we're going to say goodbye to Leaf. Thanks for coming on, and we'll definitely have him on a lot more as well as we continue our podcast network.
Yeah, man. It was nice to meet you, man.
It was good to meet you.
I'm excited to see what your Jazz do in this draft and free agency coming up. So good luck with that, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. That was a blast. I'm happy to hop on anytime.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to continue with what we were doing. So we're going to look at the slow-mo of Tatum getting hurt. As you can see, non-contact, couldn't even walk.
Jason Tatum, you can see, distraught right now. As soon as we get an update, we'll pass it along.
Absolutely breathtaking. I mean,
this was so different than the Dame injury. The only solace that, if there's any, which there isn't much from this, is that with the Dame injury, he was so lackadaisical almost in a way about it, where he just kind of sat there. And I saw this a little bit on Twitter last night, where it was like there was a chance that he might have only partially torn it, specifically because of his reaction, and that when it's a full tear, they tend to react a bit more casually, I guess, and it doesn't nearly hurt as much. So if there's any solace to take, that would be about it. But my rule with rivalries as well with injuries is that I'll root for a rival to lose by 50, but not because of an injury. if we're playing, say the Bucks were playing against Boston and this happened,
Yeah,
I'd want us to beat them by 100.
Yeah.
However, I wouldn't want it to be because of injuries. I'd want it to be because we just genuinely beat them. I don't root for injuries on any team, any player. I don't care who it is. It could be my least favorite player of all time. I'm never going to root for an injury. And I feel really horrible about what happened for Tatum because that series is essentially over. And there's a lot of questions that they have to answer. But going back to that, I really think Drew Holiday will not be a Boston Celtic next year. I don't think.
Nope.
I think him and Porzingis are probably the two odd men out if I had to put bets down. I think they're going to want to keep Derek White around just because he is a bit more upside. He's younger than Drew Holiday is. Holiday, I think, is on a bit of a decline, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And Porzingis is just the best availability is availability. He's never out there. He's never able to be healthy. He sits out a ton of games. And yeah, you just need a guy that's able to be out there and give your team valuable minutes. And with him being out so much, I don't see a reason why they bring him back.
Yeah, so what sucks about the Warriors series is that the Wolves' 10th road win in the last 2 playoffs, most in the NBA. The Warriors' 3 straight playoff losses for second time under Steve Kerr. So, I mean, it's, they definitely missed Steph Curry a lot. The updated playoff bracket right there. Obviously, the best series is the Nuggets and the Thunder. So, we're going to jump right into our last topic of the day. We're going to put a quick one on it, is the NHL playoffs. The NHL is impacting, like always. Carolina is stunning the Capitals, being up 3-1, while the Oilers are just about to advance, pretty much. The Golden Knights just doesn't look good against the Oilers at all. Completely flipped the series on Vegas. How about the Florida Panthers, though? They tied the series with the Maple Leafs at 2-2. So is this the same old Maple Leafs? Here's the updated playoff bracket. As you see, Dallas is up 2-1 on Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, the Oilers are about to take the series. Carolina looks like they're about to take the series from the Capitals, and it looks like the Toronto Maple Leafs are in a choke job at the moment.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tris. Go ahead.
We talked about how good the Leafs looked last week, Jalen. That's completely flipped. They got dominated on Sunday against Florida. They got outshot. I believe it was 29-13 in the first 2 periods. It just felt like they didn't show up for that game at all, really. And it's really disheartening because they looked so good in those first 2 games, and it felt like they were finally going to overcome that being the Toronto Cowboys or the Dallas Maple Leafs, if you know what I mean. But
the Dallas Cowboys and NHL.
It felt like almost a return to that, like a status quo type thing. And although they did wake up a bit in the third period, they really struggled in those first 2, and they were lucky to only be down 1-0 at that point.
I think we all kind of called, Florida, going to Florida and playing in Florida is like, oh my gosh,
it's like playing in Utah. You can't. It's hard to win, even though the Utah team lost a lot of home games to begin because they weren't healthy. They weren't fully healthy. But when they all came back, it was hard to win in Utah. Every player said it.
Those home team fans, man, especially in Florida, they are serious about them, man. So I don't know, man.
All they got is Miami, because that's the Miami team, really, if you think about it.
No, yeah, it pretty much is. But
that goes back to building a contender, because that Florida fan base. There's this page on X that I follow. It's called Empty Seats Galore. I used to see the Florida Panthers games on there all the time, but since they've built up a contender in the last few years, they've really built a dedicated fan base down there that's going to ride or die with that team, and winning the Stanley Cup last year has only helped to that. And it shows how tough it is to win just in general in the playoffs and playoff hockey on the road. Stealing even 1 or 2 games is just really, really impressive for a series. And I think that's part of why series go so long, is because it's so freaking hard to win on the road.
Yeah, I don't know. I got Florida winning the series, and if they do win the series, I have them winning LO, because that was my second pick of who I thought was going to win, because my first pick is out now. But either them or Dallas, I think, is going to win it. But the Maples, that's just the talk of the town right there. I don't know exactly what is going on over there in that organization, how they get through things like this on being, so good, but then so bad when it counts. It makes no sense. And I think this is a better situation than the Cowboys, at least in my opinion. The Cowboys, they don't even make it this far. So, and when they do, they get blown out. So they beat Tom Brady in the wild card that one year and then got smacked the next game. So
with the Oilers,
yeah.
I can't even say the Jets or the Dallas Stars are going to beat the Oilers at this point. I'm thinking the Jets were just going to be dominating the playoffs like they were. I mean, I obviously thought it was going to be closer than what it was, but I just thought that they would have looked a lot better than what they've looked over the past 2 series so far. And if they play like this against the Oilers, it's going to be 4-0. The way that Oilers
they
are
get
playing.
to the Oilers, that's the thing. They're down 2-1.
Right, they're down 2-1, and they're at home though, so I believe that's a really good thing for them. But man, it just really looks like it's the Oilers this season again. Like,
unfortunate, but true.
I mean, they've been dominating the Golden Knights in that series as well, and it was that series. That was the one where they scored the goal with 0.4 left to win the game. I think for the Knights, and if that doesn't happen, who says that series isn't wrapped up already? Because it would have gone to overtime, and it's anyone's chance for what happens there. So the Oilers have looked absolutely dominant so far in the second round. So my prediction of a rematch in the Stanley Cup final between the Oilers and the Panthers doesn't look too bad right now, I will say.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into our final thoughts. Quick final thoughts, fellas.
Yeah, Giannis is not going anywhere, fellas. I got a strong feeling he's staying. I got a strong feeling because, as I'm telling you, it's an agent thing, bro. It's an agent thing that people are going to discuss within the league, and they want to turn some heads and make sure people know that Giannis is going to be available if moves are not made. So I think it's the representatives around him, obviously the agent that he has, managers, whatever you want to call them. It's the people around him that are trying to build a little momentum for the Bucks to try to make a move while keeping Giannis because he is a loyal player. But that's just my opinion. I'll let you guys decide that, or I'll let the league decide what happens next. But that's just my opinion.
I'm going to start my final thought. I'm going to move over to baseball really quick with I posted this on Twitter a few times already. Is my job to win a World Series, or is my job to provide a summer of entertainment and passion and a way for families to come together? That was Brewers owner Mark Attanasio over the offseason about the state of the roster and just fielding a team this year. And let's just say that the fun and passion and ways for families to come together has not really materialized yet, per se. They've been shut out 3 times in their last 11 games. I'm insistent that they need a power bat in this lineup. I don't care where it is or where they come from. Get Rowdy Tellez back for all I care. They just need a spark or something because they don't have one right now. It's dull, lifeless baseball where they don't put up runs, they don't hit home runs, and they don't have the Willy Adames in the locker room this year to steer things the right direction when things are kind of hitting the fan a little bit. And it's really frustrating to watch because I know, at least from a starting pitching perspective, that this team is really solid. It's just they failed to address the bullpen after Devin left, and they failed to address the hitting core when it felt like all they needed was 1 or 2 more bats last year to make a really deep playoff run. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, my final thought is that I had just received when we were doing Leaf, when we was with Leaf on the broadcast, that Paul Skeens will be joining Team USA for the World Baseball Classic. So
good.
We better take it next year.
Yeah,
I like Paul Skeens a lot.
Yeah, he might be the number 1. So
good.
Do you guys think he stays in Pittsburgh past his rookie contract? Because I don't think there's any reason that he would.
No way.
They've already failed him, and it's only year 2.
No, he's not staying in Pittsburgh.
He's going big money and big city. That's exactly what he's going to do. His girlfriend is Livy Dunn. He can be as flashy as he wants with his money, and he can go to a big city and put on a performance of a lifetime. And I don't know exactly where. I hope
Unless
not
the Pirates pay him an absurd amount of money,
which is not gonna happen.
They won't.
They,
There's
no,
no way.
They are cheap. They are cheap as it gets. So no way that's gonna happen. And I don't even think they have the money to do that. He's looking like a generational talent. So
yeah.
Also, one more thing really quick, Jalen. I want to know your thoughts on this before we sign off. I saw that the Dodgers were interested in Kyle Tucker over the weekend. Do you think that happens?
If he gets to free agency, then he'll have some offers thrown at him. But as to I think he's going to the Dodgers other than the Cubs? No. Because he's not the type of player to jump on a bandwagon or a big time team that's already stacked. No.
Thing is, though, is we said the same thing about Roki Sasaki before the season, and look what happened.
Well, we knew Roki might have won because he's Japanese, and who's the number one Japanese player in the world, or the best player in the world? He's Japanese. Who is one of the best pitchers in the world? That's Japanese. Yamamoto. So he wasn't going to come to Chicago Cubs to be with Shota and Suzuki. No, he was going to go to LA and get that exposure. But he was crying on the bench when, he got pulled and he was just getting he got rocked. So, I mean, you chose that. You chose to go there. So
I feel like he could have got some shine in Chicago. It's a big market.
Yeah, he could have, but the attraction of Ohtani, the attraction of Yamamoto, he wouldn't come here.
But you can come to Chicago, get your own team, make your own name. I don't know. That's how I feel, bro.
But guys don't want to do that no more. Guys
man. I don't want the easy way to win.
They want the easy way to win. They don't like how they don't want to be like Giannis, stay with a team so long and build a championship. No one does that anymore.
Nah, I don't like that, man.
Dame. Dame literally gave his all to the Trailblazers.
Oh yeah, number retired easily when he's retired.
He literally gave his all.
Though it's harder to build a team as an individual though, just because there's so much more factors that you have to rely on. You could be slashing 340, like we saw that with Juan Soto a few years, his last few years with the Nationals, where he was just the guy on that team, him and Trey Turner, and they were still bad. Right. So I think there's so much more, and it's so much harder to carry in a sport like baseball.
Yeah, that is true. So. Subscribe, like, share, and comment. Follow our podcast page on other platforms, like the Spotify, Instagram, or TikTok. We have the links in the description box below. We will be posting reels, shorts of shows, polls, maybe question boxes. You can always DM us on things you'd like to have answered or comments you may have. We try to dabble into other topics as well. So, and with that, we'll see you all Thursday, and see the rest of the NHL playoffs.